Elena, great to see you and great to be working with you on this video series. How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good, good, good. We decided to do this video series just because we were both seeing this magnitude of change on the horizon for finance and finance functions and finance organizations. And this change is dramatic. So it seems like we're kind of at this turning point with finance operations. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so. I believe that finance is really on the cusp of a major transformation of its identity, where both the job description and how it's done will change as a result of these technologies that we now have available to us. And so this presents a great opportunity for finance to work together with the functions, gain more influence, improve decision-making, strategic decisions for the entire company. And that is what I'm seeing, and that is why I'm so excited about this change.
Me too, me too. And I would say that not only is the decision-making in companies, regardless of whether they're finance companies or not, going to improve, it's going to be founded on a great deal more information, more insight, as you've said. But not only that, it can happen at a faster and faster pace, which is kind of commensurate with where we are at in this post-millennium world of everything all the time at faster and faster speeds. So looks like it's coming at just the right time to help us all look forward in what we're doing.
Yes, and this is really why we have put this video series together, is to empower finance professionals at all levels in their ability to take advantage of these opportunities that technology has presented to us.
Great.
Hello, and welcome to our video series on cloud computing and AI, considerations for finance and insurance professionals. My name is Elena. I'm the principal and founder of OTB Advisory, focused on major finance projects such as automation and digital transformation. In this series, we will talk about how technology has been shaping the finance and insurance functions. Linda and I wanted to share our thoughts and experiences about practical tools and a balance between pushing forward and being sensitive to the impacts of change. We hope that it will help you generate ideas that you can use in your work and business.
Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Miller, president and founder of iMind Transformation, which is a consulting firm that specializes in the organizational, culture, and identity transformation associated with digital transformation and business transformation. What we do is we bring pre-millennium companies into the success factors that are required to meet the challenges of the post-millennium business world. I'm also the founder of the Continuous Transformation Management Framework, which is a set of methods, practices, and tools oriented toward continuous digital and business transformation. What these do is build a capability for the organization to face successive radical change year over year that is interconnected. My career roots are in hands-on implementation of leading-edge business technologies, and for the last 20 years, I've been leading digital transformations and corporate restructures. Before Elena discusses why it's important to talk about AI and cloud computing for finance, I'm going to do a brief history of time version of how we arrived at the place where these technologies came into being. First, it's important to trace how we arrived at the place where real-time computing was necessary and important. Most finance organizations still have these three ways of computing on hand. And it's necessary to say at this point that client-server and internet-based computing are and will continue to be the subject of systems integration, data integration for many years to come, while mainframe processing, on the other hand, is fast disappearing and may take on new forms in the future, but I won't comment on that here. In short terms, the internet has provided the opportunity for customers to do more of the processing work in their relationship with their service providers. They're happy to do so, since trying to reach their service providers during hours of work using one-shot systems that are difficult to use was just becoming untenable. So on-demand, real-time processing was seen to be a win-win for both consumer and supplier. Now, the notion of on my time, on my terms came into the corporate radar as data warehouses and business intelligence began offering competitive advantages. As globalization and the emergence of smartphones started to produce more and more volumes of data to work with and offered new insights into how businesses might scale or might evolve cost effectively, the need for more sophisticated standards, more sophisticated regulation to protect the consumer also emerged. If we consider the period of time when these conditions took root between, say, 1995 and 2010, it's easy to correlate the constriction of funding as a driving factor for the creation of new forms of shared computing and computing resources. Companies saw the potential of unified systems, of course, and data services across their global offices, and the possibility of taking automation of simple tasks to the next level, thereby creating labor efficiencies. As in all things, one step leads to another, and the groundwork in cloud computing provided a jumping off point for a quantum leap in process streamlining, whereby more work could be processed through the existing labor pool and yield greater decision-making intelligence at the same time, and the ability to change direction and adapt to new conditions very, very quickly.
Thank you so much, Linda. I thought we would begin with a brief overview of where we are today using the cloud. And I'd like to highlight a few statistics on this slide. First, IT budgets allocated to the cloud are growing and are expected to increase by over 50% by 2024. Why is this happening? Well, the key benefits of the cloud for users is the economies of scale, expandability, global information and remote access, cross-departmental communication, and computing power, including big data. The most common application of the cloud today is for accessing applications remotely and for processing information, and these uses are growing. We can see that virtually all companies today have some form of cloud use, with 30% of the average workload handled on the cloud. And importantly, in common with other business transformations, only 33% of cloud transformations meet their expected results. We will talk about why that is and what to do about it later in the series. Now let's turn to perhaps the most exciting aspect of our intro, and that is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is simply the computer's ability to process data intelligently by mimicking the reasoning and behavior of living beings. When we talk about or think about what computers do, which aspects of this would be artificial intelligence? The pyramid here illustrates the level of how smart these applications are. At the bottom is robotic process automation. In fact, RPA is perhaps something that you've heard a lot about because it is so prevalent now in finance and business process automation applications and platforms. However, the RPA piece is actually at the bottom of the pyramid. RPA uses computers' ability to execute routine tasks based on specific, structured, and logical rules. It is the lowest level of the pyramid and the least intelligent application because it is entirely dependent on the quality of the rules that humans produce. These rules tell computers exactly what, when, and how to do something. They must include error handling and all patterns of behavior. Unpredictable events may cause errors, and computers do not learn from them. At the next level, computers are capable of solving problems without specific instructions, and they can, at this point, adapt to unpredictable circumstances. They can self-manage and make decisions based on high-level policies created by humans. The systems will continuously check their status and adapt to changing conditions, which reduces system management complexity, which is really the purpose of these autonomous applications. Next, we have cognitive computing. This is the level where computers can analyze data without any specific direction from humans, including high-level policies or specific task instructions. These systems simulate human reasoning and behavior. They learn and reason from their interactions with human beings and experiences in their environment. They use large amounts of data and build their own algorithms using data mining, pattern recognition, natural language processing, machine and deep learning, and neural networks. Face and fraud detection are examples of practical applications. And finally, we have the top level of artificial intelligence, which augments human thinking to solve complex problems, predict outcomes, and importantly, make independent decisions. At this level, AI finds patterns, hidden information, and previously unknown solutions. And this is used a lot in finance, for example, in trading platforms. Another example of this is self-driving cars. What other applications or examples of AI can you think about in your current work and in finance? Of course, they might be RPA platforms like we mentioned. They might be insights you get from Power BI. They might be optical character recognition, natural language processing, predictive analytics in CPM, XPM, and FP&A software. LinkedIn is another example where it tries to create patterns out of your interactions with its material, identifying your skills, jobs that are a good fit, as well as suggestions for your network. So we saw that at the top of the pyramid, computers look for insights and either provide them to humans or make their own decisions based on them. Insights are a function of data quality and quantity. This is why data strategies are the foundation for any digital transformation, cloud computing, or AI strategy. As more data is better, they're best collected from the entire organization. However, the data collected should also be of high quality, verified, and relevant. AI is done with the use of machine learning, which is the computer's ability to find patterns in data without explicit directions. Some of the technology, such as artificial neural networks, is based on biological systems, that is, the brain. However, major differences exist. For example, artificial neural networks do not have neural plasticity. That is, they're static and they cannot change and grow on their own. Neural plasticity and novel problem solving are a core element of human intelligence, allowing us to solve problems with little experience and to fundamentally change our thinking patterns, beliefs, skills, and behavior. This is the aspect that is currently beyond the reach of computers and where human contribution is so important. The adjective deep in deep learning refers to the use of multiple layers in a network. For example, in image processing, lower layers may identify edges, while higher layers may identify the concepts relevant to a human, such as digits, letters, faces, or images. This concludes my contribution to the conceptual portion of the slides. I hope that it will make your conversations with IT and data professionals more intuitive, so together you can successfully drive an innovation in cross-functional teams. So now we'll look at the key success factors for digital transformation. What makes them successful, and what are some of the things you can do as the project leader or the senior leader within the organization to achieve success. And also we'll look at a few examples of tools and best practices that you can hopefully use in your practice. So what are some of the critical success factors and barriers in a digital transformation? Here you see the results of a poll that was done by leading ERP providers that lists both barriers and success factors that were found. And success factors here also build on some of the other research and experience of a variety of entities that were undertaking finance transformation specifically. So the biggest barrier is actually team readiness and resources. And this is true for most change initiatives, especially the ones that impact core business processes and require people to do additional work on top of their business as usual activities. The second barrier was defining the right scope and priorities. And as I mentioned earlier in our video series, this is a common challenge that is best addressed by agreeing on the foundational principles and components of the initiative. On the other hand, the key success factors named were the close relationships between the requirements and real user experience, the detailed and realistic UIT scenarios, and a clear tie to business value and executive sponsorship, as well as prioritizing needs and training staff. Overall, you need an experienced senior project leader, usually someone performing at a VP level at least. They need to be able to build cross-functional relationships, understand organizational process and the big picture, get stakeholder buy-in, and implement in a way that will deliver lasting value. When these initiatives are run out of finance, there's usually a lack of understanding of how cross-functional the impact is. And so there needs to be training with the business units on how to leverage their current abilities of really cross-functional technology that is fully integrated within the organization. So we're talking about what makes an implementation successful, something that involves significant technological change and probably changes how people work within the organization. And so here we talk about how do we maximize the success of leading organizational change, effectively discovering our business needs, selecting the right solution, and then effectively implementing it. Because technology is a change enabler, but people ultimately make change successful. In leading teams and people, including cross-functional teams, I want to highlight what some call the cardinal sin of management. And that is for a manager to assume that people understand the organization and are motivated the same way as the manager. And this assumption then cascades through every process and every interaction. What I would instead invite you to do is to assume that this may not be true, and then in the interactions with people to focus on how they understand the organization and its strategy, as well as where they see the biggest gaps in impact. It is highly useful to listen to people who disagree and are motivated differently, because people can tell us things we do not know, and often this is what makes or breaks an effective implementation. Overall, because a lot of system implementations like this involve changing processes, let's talk about the 4 levers that we generally use to maximize success in changing process through teams. The first one is communication. Are people communicating openly? Can they express disagreement or concern and be listened to? Here, higher psychological safety is correlated with implementation success. If people do not feel safe to express their concerns and opinions, they can't learn, they can't innovate, and we will likely have significant blind spots in our implementation. The second one is structure. Here, will the team composition be based on hierarchy, seniority, or skill, and how much trust will be present within the team? How will the leader and team members communicate with different levels of the organizational hierarchy? Generally, skill-based, high-trust teams and effective multi-level communication are correlated with implementation success. This does have to work with the specific organizational culture, though. The third lever is environment. Here, we need ground rules and a welcoming atmosphere so that people can work and manage stress and conflict effectively. And finally, we have tone at the top. Much of the above depends on the leader's style and behavior and how much support there is for the project within the senior leadership team. And one overall point, while hierarchies can help navigate decisions and actions in large organizations, they do increase perceived status differences, reducing both psychological safety and effective communication. If you work within a hierarchical organization, this does present the risk of having missing information, and this risk should be managed. So here I want to make another point about how cross-functional this work is. And if you are considering transformational technology, you must evaluate it through a cross-functional lens. As I mentioned before, this might involve educating people in other functions on what that really means, maybe giving them examples of modules or systems or enablers that will help them in their work and make them understand better how that can integrate with the rest of the organization and its data. Organizations today still have very functional, narrow skill sets in specific areas, and it can be difficult for people to see processes outside of their areas of functional expertise. So you will need to be able to see and explain how this new technology will deliver value to the organization overall, the specific function, maximizing integration of processes, data, and relationships. Secondly, it is important to focus first on business requirements before thinking about systems. My experience is that if you're thinking about a large-scale technological change within the organization, it is important to do a system-agnostic requirements analysis cross-functionally within the entire organization. And that assessment would include the current system architecture, relationships between systems, as well as processes, data flows, and key needs cross-functionally. And this assessment has to be at a level that is deep enough to really uncover maturity gaps, integration gaps, and unmet needs within the current processes. It also would address inefficiencies that would arise when departments try to manage data, processes, and reporting in their individual departmental silos. Since we're talking about complex project implementation, complex project leadership, let's talk about accountability. What is accountability really? And that is when a specific individual answers for the success or the failure of a specific project or deliverable. And unlike responsibility that can be delegated, accountability does not get delegated. And that makes it very important that it's clearly defined and understood. When it is not defined, the doom loop that we refer to here can occur. And that is when you have multiple people thinking that they're accountable or nobody really thinking they're accountable. People do not take initiative. There are multiple command centers. There's confusion over who is really making decisions. There could be an action and even turf wars. It's very difficult to prioritize needs within the organization, which then causes delays, budget overruns, and quality problems. So the most important thing really about establishing clear accountabilities is enabling fast decisions and limiting turf wars. And when accountability is unclear, as I mentioned, multiple groups begin thinking that they're in charge, that their needs potentially are more important. When people need help from others, they have no authority to get them to deliver key work according to the schedule. And in the end, jobs do not get done. And instead of lessons learned, their fingers pointed. However, establishing accountability with the wrong person can also backfire when that individual lacks the skills for effective decision-making within teams. In one case in my practice, this resulted in major frustrations on the team and almost led to unacceptable delays. Therefore, it is important to have a process for escalating issues within the team. And finally, it is important to note that accountability is not at odds with psychological safety. And accountability is not the same as blaming. Accountability and psychological safety at all levels drives people to communicate clearly and manage risks and work effectively together, rather than pointing fingers when things go wrong. And here again, I would like to make a point about bringing external leadership to the project, because it is usually quite difficult to find a VP level individual who is able to step away from their internal day-to-day work and lead a project of this magnitude as effectively as these projects need to be led. So it is quite helpful to bring in a very senior professional who is experienced at cross-functional project leadership, who is savvy with technology, and who can build relationships within the organization at different levels. This person, while having a lot of seniority, likely will also need to be able to be quite hands-on, just due to the demands of projects of this nature. And some other ideas on the slide are, of course, there need to be clear protocols for making decisions, clear protocols for moving things forward, as well as effective steering committee and effective functioning with the executive sponsor. And of course, here again, we're talking about a change. We're talking about implementing something that's going to change how the organization uses its data, uses technology, and how people work together. So again, we're talking about change leadership and change management here. And there's, of course, lots of theories around both. And the two primary aspects that I have found to be effective in change leadership and change management is for the first one, or the former one, we need to talk about intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation really goes to the level of dissatisfaction with the status quo. It's dissatisfaction with the state of affairs in the organization, how it can be done better, so maybe how much impact the department has already, how much work is manual within the department. So all of those factors really help people find that motivation to push forward through a project like that. And here it's also helpful to have clear expectations, clear vision for why we're doing this and where we're going to end up. It's important to listen to people. It's important to understand, what is the model of the future really that we're building that is compelling. And then on change management, it's really three things. It's, do people understand what we're doing? Do people agree with the why and the what of we're doing? And then finally, do they have the tools? Do they have the skills, the ability, the tools, clarity that they need in order to be effective partners in this change? And in closing, here are some additional considerations that are specific to AI and cloud computing in implementing your new technology. So some of the really important ones that I'm sure you have heard about and have thought a lot about if you're a senior leader within an organization is information privacy and cybersecurity. Those are really ever evolving and they require a lot of internal training. And so as part of the work that you're doing, you will of course already be thinking about this, but it's just really to emphasize that this is really important. And if you address a threat today, new threats will appear. So it's a continuous process of finding the right partner and the right resources internally within the organization to monitor this, continue to train people, continue to implement programs within the organization that will give people real examples of what it is they really need to pay attention to and be careful with. And it's really important, of course, with cloud computing, where there's a lot of data transfer. The other important point is integration with existing systems. That is much more possible with cloud computing because there's a lot of data that can be brought both from and outside the organization. And the opportunities for integration are really very, very great, and that's important in managing the project. It's an opportunity that this is the opportunity to replace legacy systems and integrate these systems properly. We do run into situations where there are complex systems that have a lot of customization that sort of continue to be built to enable the organization to grow. And then there are third-party providers that come in and build integrators that are also highly customized on top of these highly customized systems. And then something breaks down and it becomes really expensive and close to impossible to fix the integrator because there is no longer any internal expertise. That people don't really understand how it works, and it would be a big investment in fixing problems. So with cloud computing and support from vendors, this is a significant consideration as to the value and how to make these systems scalable without too much customization. The remaining slides are really just examples for you to refer to when you build your own project plans and project charters and RFPs and vendor scorecards. So in closing, really, it's a very exciting time for really major change like that, radical change within organizations that involve processes, people, and technology. And I'm very excited about always participating in projects like this. It's very dynamic. I love being part of organizations that drive this forward and have strong leadership teams that I can be part of in advancing this forward. And I hope that you enjoy the process and get the value that you expect from these projects. Now, kind of summing up the thoughts on what makes an effective implementation of a technology project that involves process change and involves change within the organization in general, we have included a few tools and common good practices for your reference here. And certainly, if you have questions, you can always reach out to Linda and I, and we can provide you with more specific information. We have included a project charter, which is really important and really nails down a lot of the key aspects that I touched upon here today. We've included a project playbook for your, as an example, as well as some thoughts on the RFP process, including the vendor scoring criteria that you can consider in building your own RFPs to get third-party assistance in both discovery or needs discovery, as well as your implementation partner.
The advent of the Internet of Things has been a game changer, and in combination with AI and cloud computing toolsets, the employee-employer relationship and the covenant of expectations between them is in the process of a significant revision. Across company structures and around the world, businesses have been grappling with the losses of fluidity and flow of work throughput, as high degrees of ambiguity and exponentially more complex working environments manifest, and greater speed and agility is required just to stay in the game. Greater demand for worker autonomy isn't being met, and widening gaps between the static, controls-bound organizational structures of the past and the new expansive and agile structures that are needed to thrive are only partially filled with the installation of AI and cloud computing. Around the world, a new notion of the mechanisms for success is becoming clear and accepted. These mechanisms line up behind humanization, globalization, standardization, and of course, automation. It's evident that new millennium success strategies are now opposite or inverted when compared to those strategies used before the turn of the millennium. However, to put these strategies into action, even with solid cloud computing and AI toolsets, the ways in which people approach their work, what they consider normal, stabilizing patterns and structures, and how they relate to each other and their work must dramatically shift. To begin the discussion of thinking and working differently, I wanted to use this portion of the diagram from the introduction. It's in this arena where the major mindset shifts occur in finance functions and corporations to embrace those inverted success strategies and produce results under post-millennium conditions. Yes, information technology has some pretty major alterations in how they work to undertake, but the big difference for them is that they'll be doing those alterations with the full participation and interest from business groups. A more diverse stakeholder model means there's more work to do to make technology decisions, and those decisions are now bound to business strategy like never before. For finance, the ability to process more speculation and test more theories emerges with AI and cloud computing enabled tools. And just in time to face the growing ambiguity and the increasing complexity, and of course the escalating speed of conducting business. Finance can produce many more models using exponentially more detailed data at a pace and timing they need to, regardless of time zone, and with the leveraging assistance of the various forms of AI. In short, it's possible to match the speed of business with the speed of change, and also possible to mitigate ambiguity inherent in continuously transforming world and business using these tools. But it's not possible to use the tools effectively unless how people work, think, and relate to each other changes correspondingly. In particular, in order to have the decision-making engine moving at the right speed, with decisions rooted in the best available intelligence provided by AI and cloud-enabled tools, The people in all interrelated functions must be able to collaborate to a high degree week to week. In effect, co-creating the work products and solutions. This means that teams must be in constant connection, their managers and leaders must be in constant connection. Two related contexts that exemplify the extent to which it's necessary to alter the ways of thinking and working to align with the nature and capability of technology tools are: 1. Initiatives that implement digital tech transformation can't succeed for the money and time available unless there's first some alteration in how people are working that mirrors the future state. And 2, operations that use the new technology tools can't apply them effectively using pre-millennium transactional, siloed, and stop-check structures and processes and ways of working. I should point out that the equation of technology tools alteration plus the process re-engineering plus common initiative change management does not begin to address the depth of the shifts in mindset and behavior required. A specific effort in culture and behavioral expectations with well laid out soft skills competency must be made and implemented starting at the highest levels of the organization. Now, the best solutions and the ability to make decisions that deliver the best solutions have a growing dependence on the ability of people at all levels to draw upon each other's strengths. And what this means in simple terms is that people must not only work together across teams, functions, disciplines to produce what the company needs to be successful, but they must collaborate. The word collaboration has many faceted and encapsulates a myriad of evolved abilities and behaviors. A few of the facets of collaboration that people will need to work through are: 1, the source of the individual's success now changes. 2, the pattern of work to produce success and meet expectations now changes. The expectations themselves change regularly, especially in transforming environments and continuously transforming environments. And 4, more of the work itself is fluid at any given time. As depicted in this diagram, where people were focused upwardly and downwardly, they are now focused laterally and in all directions as well, with the same or greater intensity. Where people had clear beginnings and endings to a piece of work and the associated satisfaction of that, they now have several never-ending streams of work over the course of which, over time and through iteration, a product emerges as consumable and moves into a finished state. In essence, working in real time must now catch up with the ability of computers and systems to function in real time. Work ordering and priority will be increasingly fluid. Therefore, work environments can expect to become more and not less ambiguous. Now, adding to all of this is the layer of continuous transformation that teams and leaders will continuously participate in. The increasing frequency and magnitude of changes in technology tools, organizational structures, and success strategies. So the individual's success then is tied much more closely to the success of others. It's dependent on knowing and then utilizing each other's abilities to co-create a solution or work product that most effectively demonstrates the decision points and the nature and the nuances of those decision points. So not only is it a much greater degree of team and worker autonomy needed for success to be realized, ultimately for the business to thrive, the people's sense of achievement must find a new location. Alongside that, of course, what certainty is has to be relocated, and the commonly understood definition of fact or truth or being right has to be revised. Financial cultures and behavioral norms have strong roots in competition and being right for obvious reasons. Singular success is traditionally prized above collaborative outcomes. So revision of expectations across the board and corresponding behavioral revision likely won't be easy or fast. That said, transformative change will march on, and developing people at the same time is a challenge that can be expected to reach new heights in the coming years. So you might well be asking, how are results produced under these new sort of spherical, nonlinear, multi-dimensional ways of working that, take collaboration into co-creation? And I have two things I want to comment on here in that. And the first thing is to learn to trust in the unseen or the not yet visible. And what I mean by that is to learn to trust the process, trust that work is being processed by colleagues who are doing their part, and that pieces that are needed will move into place when the time is right, as opposed to having those stacked up in advance and knowing exactly where all your ducks are. And the second one is to derive certainty from the volumes of data that are being iteratively processed into this accurate picture, and rather than trusting or deriving your certainty from an individual's superior experience or knowledge. And trust in the collective combined with this iterative processing of data. Work then becomes a little bit more like making a movie than building a house, let's say. Leaders are more like stewards of assets and focusers of the energy of the people that are in their charge and on their teams. And they become the lens through which people now view the work at hand week to week. It's comparatively easy to build the technology tools that incorporate cloud computing and AI. The work to capitalize on what cloud and AI offers becomes increasingly difficult moving into process design. And what inhibits the work to transform is the enormous gap between how people are accustomed to working and how they need to work and regard their work to maximize the advantages of these tools, such that they create that business advantage that we're reaching for. This has never been a strength in businesses so far. Few businesses have had the strength of being able to take technology and really reap all of the rewards that were in the business case. So in finance, where it's all about math and stasis and control and controlled steps, there's a bit of a dichotomy to observe that has many dimensions that I refer to those dimensions or those dichotomies as transformational paradoxes. And it's in this arena that cloud computing and artificial intelligence shine and make possible the straddling of pre-millennium and post-millennium ideology, that's straddling for long enough at least to make the leap into the light speed of everyday post-millennium doing business. Now, operations will be based in action, decision, action, run of the run, grow, transform pattern. And their role now becomes more like an air traffic controller or air traffic control stance in order to land all the change upon change upon change that's coming their way and still have an effective operation. Shifting faith and confidence from visible and measurable to unseen but trending is the way that I'd like to summarize what I've said here. So for finance operations, the typical post-millennium shifts in thinking and ways of working break down here into some very specific and major alterations in ideology and paradigm. And this paradigm represents an entirely new set of behaviors that need to be learned. We won't go through these here today, but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about before we move into the next slide. Just a few parting words and to connect the discussion so far to the first slide on decisioning and results. AI and cloud computing have this effect of loosening the bonds that made transparency difficult in the past. So fostering an understanding of financial reports, for instance, is easier when that speed of interpretation allows a distillation into crisp, clear educational points on the results and how they were arrived at. Since operations looks very different in this new world, Common best practices in time management, business planning, work management, and employee development almost need to be cast aside, if not significantly reshaped at a minimum. And of course, this presumes that the organization already applies common leading edge practices in methods in measured ways around information technology planning, data governance, and change initiative management. Now, I should say that leaders are going to have less time and not more time for a while. So individuals will need to grasp some development in those areas of development on the slide in order to close gaps in the meantime and remain productive.